Okay, welcome back. It is 5/12 of 2015. We're going to continue with Lacocque and his introductory comments on the creation narratives. He already gave us a little bit of context by discussing the fact that the creation narratives were basically a part of a soteriology, and that the creation narratives went from mythology to the tension between the mythological and the historical, and then onward finally to the wisdom literature and the historical narrative. But this time he wants to concentrate on the middle moment. He wants to concentrate on that narrative that was tensioned between trying to leave the mythological and move on to the historical, but not quite able to do so. So we have a mixture here of a little bit of both. So we got the three moments of the Genesis 1 mythological creation narrative, and then Genesis 2 and 3 are the sapiential or the transitional creation narrative that is mythological and historical both. And then finally, the wisdom literature of the historical. We're going to be taking a look at the second moment primarily. So if we take a look at the sapiential means it describes a young sapling pretending at maturity. And so it is a creation narrative that is on its way to becoming wisdom literature, but not quite getting there yet, still clinging to some mythological ideas. So God is powerful in this narrative. He is King of Kings. He is vulnerable. And the human problem is equal to the one of wisdom and the ability to discern good and evil. Adam is a sage-type figure who participates in naming and the assigning of names to all the animals of creation. And there's a triad of forces of threat, love, and temptation that work throughout the narrative. The scope is universal in nature. It addresses the universality of the human condition. So it is a scope of universality. It portrays a historical pattern of disobedience resulting in punishment, but ultimately in divine mercy. And it shows man's departure into an introspective self-reflection. It's something that is not natural. It is it's a part of salvation history. It's actually considered a divine act of salvation history, this introspective self-reflection of humanity. The complementary imperatives of human existence shift the narrative back and forth between historical experience and the mythological meta-narrative. And so this is more or less a first attempt at full wisdom type literature. Myth is employed to narrate transcendent meaning, and Lacocque says that the narrative of the serpent, that's what he wants to take a look at here. The narrative of the serpent is the prime example of this fluctuation between the two types of narrative, the mythological and the historical. The best example we have is the narrative of the serpent. On the historical side, the serpent is created by Yahweh. This is the serpent existing outside humanity. The serpent is demoted, but some of its mythology is retained. For example, even late in Isaiah, the Leviathan of chaos takes up this mythological aspect of the serpent. On the mythological side, the serpent's evolution is paralleled to the human fall to disgrace. It's a snake with a character of mythology. The serpent represents the animal nature of humanity. That's the best way to put it. The serpent represents the animal nature of humanity. It represents the human turning toward the animal. So the serpent represents the motif of human confrontation with that animal genus. out of which it gained birth. The intent of the narrative is to show that humanity must leave behind the animal nature and that realm as a prerequisite for entering into a deeper and depth of meaning and a development of culture as a manifestation of participating in the existential image of God. So this serpent is a serpent within humanity. The mythological serpent is that animal nature within humanity. The serpent is associated with knowledge, but also, on the negative side, sorcery. It's able to slough off its skin in indefinite rebirths. Therefore, Adam, we see, always feels existentially insecure. He's pressed in on all sides by the chaos of his animal nature, just as creation itself is pressed in on all sides by chaos. The serpent communicates with one side of humanity, Eve, so the breach within humanity is emphasized. There is this animal side and the sage side. The serpent invades another genus only to pull it down to its own isolation. Now, the idea of nakedness, the serpent and the human are both naked and open to possibility. But this third nakedness of the serpent becomes a mirror that creates a resultant withdrawal within the self of humanity. The serpent figuratively eats dust, and the dust is death. We return to the dust at death. So the serpent eats death itself. Sensuality becomes the vehicle that brings out the animal nature of humanity. And the serpent speaking to Eve represents the animal versus Eve as divine breath. Now the fruit of knowledge is equal to existential knowledge. And the serpent becomes the existential opposition to the imperative to existentially become the image of God as the humanization of creation. That's the commission that the Creator desires humanity to take up. Sexuality ends up becoming a paradigm of the existential. But existential knowledge leads to a transition from a non-self-consciousness in nakedness to a self-consciousness as defenselessness. So weakness becomes existentially exposed as a revelation. The result of all this is that reality comes to equal the interpretation of reality. But the result is that there is a blurred interpretive vision that needs correction and healing by the Anointed One of Isaiah 42:7. The result is an alienation from the self, an alienation from others, or the other. So knowledge is really just a knowledge at the base level, the material level of the surface nakedness. And humanity and being are incapable of the depth of dialogue. They have lost that existential depth. But you can see that for Lacocque, the serpent in the Hebrew Bible is a historical, out of and exterior to humanity as a created snake animal. But in a mythological way, the serpent is the inward animal nature of humanity that is pulling humanity down. It's the serpent within humanity. But all of that leads to an existential knowledge that is surface-based and does not possess the depth of dialogue that is needed for humanity to bring forth the image of God, which is the humanization of creation. Image of God is an existential and eschatological process or goal. So that gives us a second bit of introductory material from Lacocque on how the second narrative of creation is tension between the historical and the mythological.